May 24th, 1941. North Atlantic, southwest of Iceland. The sea is a sheet of steel beneath a low ceiling of fog. Wind lashes spray across the deck of HMS Prince of Wales as her lookouts squint through binoculars, scanning for the impossible. The shadow of a monster rumored to roam the Atlantic. At 5:45, that shadow emerges. Through the mist, two German ships appear on the horizon, the heavy cruiser Prince Eugen leading, and behind her, the most feared battleship afloat, Bismarck. Her gray hull cuts through the waves like a blade, gun turrets glinting faintly in the morning light. At over 800 feet long and armed with 8 15-inch guns, she is the pride of the Kriegsmarine. A fortress of steel, faster than most cruisers and deadlier than any ship afloat. On the British bridge, Vice Admiral Lancelot Holland mutters, "There she is." The bloody Bismarck, he turns to his gunnery officer. "Open fire." The Battle of the Denmark Strait begins. From 15 miles apart, the two fleets exchange thunder. The air trembles as Hood, the Royal Navy's flagship, the mighty Hood, launches her opening salvo. Her guns roar, sending fiery shells arcing toward the distant gray shape. Bismarck returns fire. Her shells scream through the air, landing short, geysers of water rising around Hood. Then, at 6 o'clock, everything changes. A German shell finds its mark. It strikes near Hood's aft magazines and detonates. In an instant, Britain's pride is gone. The explosion is blinding, a sunburst tearing the battlecruiser in half. When the smoke clears, only burning oil remains on the water. Of her 1,418 crew, just 3 survive. A stunned silence grips both fleets. On Bismarck's bridge, Captain Ernst Lindemann removes his cap. "Gott sei ihrer Seele gnädig," he murmurs. "May God have mercy on their souls." But the moment passes. Bismarck's mission continues. To break into the Atlantic and destroy Allied convoys. The German crew cheers. They've just annihilated the Royal Navy's most famous ship. In London, when the news reaches Churchill, he goes pale. Then he utters the words that will shape the next 72 hours. Sink the Bismarck. Every British warship in the Atlantic is ordered to sea. Carriers, destroyers, cruisers, even battleships still under repair, turn their bows toward the hunt. The North Atlantic becomes a chessboard of death. The weather turns foul, waves cresting at 40 feet, wind shrieking like banshees. But the hunt continues. Day by day, the British fleet narrows the search. On May 25th, a radio intercept reveals that Bismarck is heading toward the French port of Brest for repairs. She's wounded. A shell from Prince of Wales has ruptured her fuel tanks. The great battleship is bleeding oil across the ocean, but she's still moving. The only chance to stop her lies with HMS Ark Royal, a carrier racing in from the south, her deck crew preparing the only weapon left that can reach the German giant. Not new, not fast, not armored, but perhaps just enough. A biplane. The Fairey Swordfish, May 26, 1941. Aboard HMS Ark Royal, North Atlantic. The wind howls across the carrier's flight deck, flinging icy spray over the crew as the ship cuts through the waves. Below deck, the hangar smells of oil, sea salt, and damp canvas. Mechanics swarm around a line of fragile-looking aircraft. Spindly biplanes with fabric wings and open cockpits, relics of another era. The Fairey Swordfish, the string bag, as her crews affectionately call her, is a paradox. She's slow, outdated, almost laughable next to the sleek monoplanes of the Luftwaffe. Her top speed barely scratches 140 miles per hour, slower than some World War I fighters. And yet, on this gray morning, these old machines are all that stand between Bismarck and safety. Lieutenant Commander John Moffett, 22 years old and pale from the cold, climbs into his cockpit. His observer, Sub-Lieutenant Dusty Miller, checks the torpedo latches one last time. "God help us if we miss," Miller mutters. Moffett gives a grim smile. "Then we'll come around to try again." On the bridge, Captain Loban Mond of the Ark Royal looks through his binoculars toward the horizon. Signal from the cruiser Sheffield, Bismarck sighted, bearing 240 degrees, 20 miles. The flight deck officer waves his flag. "Launch the Swordfish." Engines cough to life, the sound of 1,000 lawnmowers in a storm. The biplanes rumble down the slick wooden deck, wings trembling in the gale. One by one, they lift into the air, vanishing into the mist. Below them, the sea heaves violently. Spray lashes the open cockpits. Wind tears at the pilots' scarves. The Swordfish pilots can barely hear one another over the roar of the storm and the growl of their Bristol Pegasus engines. Somewhere in the swirling gray ahead, Bismarck steams toward France at 20 knots, zigzagging to avoid detection. Her captain, Ernst Lindemann, believes he's safe. The Royal Navy's battleships have fallen behind. Night is coming. But high above, Moffett and his squadron press on. "Contact!" calls one of the observers. "Target dead ahead." The clouds part just enough for a glimpse, a gray mountain of steel carving through the waves. Smoke pours from her funnels. Bismarck. "Right, lads," says Moffett into his throat mic. "Let's go earn our pay." The attack begins. The Swordfish dive low, barely 100 feet above the sea, engines straining against the wind. The German battleship spots them almost instantly. Her anti-aircraft batteries open fire. The air fills with red and orange tracers, a storm of metal and flame. Each flak burst rocks the fragile biplanes like toys. Canvas tears. One Swordfish bursts into flame and cartwheels into the sea. Another loses a wing, vanishing into spray. But the survivors press on, weaving through the barrage, skimming the waves so low their wheels almost kiss the surface. From Bismarck's deck, German sailors stare in disbelief. These aren't modern fighters. They're relics, slow-moving, ungainly things. Laughter breaks out amid the gun crews. "Langsamer als unsere Schulmaschinen," one shouts, slower than our training planes. But their laughter dies as one Swordfish after another closes the distance. The first torpedo slams into Bismarck's starboard side. A column of water and smoke erupts, followed by a deep, metallic groan. Damage, but not fatal. Then another torpedo hits aft. The great battleship shudders, slowing. And then one more. A single torpedo strikes just beneath the stern, exploding with a dull, muffled thud. The blast isn't spectacular. No fireball, no great plume, but inside Bismarck, disaster unfolds. The shock wave bends steel, warping the rudder assembly. Hydraulic lines rupture. The steering gears jam hard to port. On the bridge, Lindemann grips the railing. "Steuerung, rudder mittschiffs." "Rudder not responding, sir," comes the reply. "Versuchen Sie es manuell." Nothing. The massive ship begins an uncontrollable turn to port, circling helplessly against the captain's will. Lindemann's jaw tightens. "Gott im Himmel." On Ark Royal, the pilots who survived turn for home, their fuel nearly gone. Moffett glances back over his shoulder at the faint shape of the enemy battleship still afloat, still defiant, but now moving in tight, confused circles. He doesn't know it yet, but his torpedo has sealed Bismarck's fate. Night falls. The ocean grows dark and silent. save for the hum of distant engines and the hiss of wind over waves. Somewhere out there, a crippled giant turns endlessly in the sea. Hunted, trapped, doomed. May 27th, 1941. 200 miles west of Brest dawn. The morning breaks gray and cold over the Atlantic. Waves roll gently beneath a low ceiling of clouds. The air smells of fuel, salt, and smoke, the remnants of a long, violent chase. Through the mist, the German battleship Bismarck looms, still mighty, still defiant, but mortally wounded. Her rudder remains jammed hard to port, forcing her to circle endlessly in the open sea. Her engines growl in frustration, churning water but gaining nothing. On the bridge, Captain Ernst Lindemann grips the railing, eyes red from exhaustion. His uniform is soaked in condensation, his face streaked with soot. He hasn't slept in nearly 2 days. "How long until we regain control of the rudder?" he asks, voice raw. Chief Engineer Wilhelm Schmidt shakes his head. "We've tried everything, sir. Divers, hydraulic bypass, manual override. Nothing moves." Lindemann exhales, staring out across the gray sea. "Then we're finished." Below decks, the corridors of Bismarck hum with grim activity. Men patch fuel lines, carry shells, and pass buckets of water to fight small fires still burning from the air attack. The ship creaks like an old beast, her once proud frame now bent and bleeding. Yet the crew continues their duties, not because they expect to live, but because the alternative is unthinkable. At 8 o'clock, the lookout cries out, "Ships on the horizon!" Multiple contacts. Through binoculars, white flashes flicker against the clouds, muzzle blasts. The Royal Navy has arrived. HMS King George V and HMS Rodney, flanked by cruisers Norfolk and Dorsetshire, close in from the west. Their decks bristle with 14 and 16-inch guns, barrels glistening with sea spray. On the bridge of Rodney, Admiral Sir John Tovey watches the crippled battleship through his binoculars. There she is. "The great Bismarck," he murmurs. "End of the line." He lowers the glasses and gives the order. "Open fire." At 8:47, Rodney's first salvo thunders across the sea. A second later, King George V joins in. The sound is like rolling thunder, shaking the horizon. The first shells fall short. The next ones don't. The ocean erupts in towering plumes of water around Bismarck. The German ship replies with her forward turrets, each blast hurling tons of steel into the air. But her aim is off. With the rudder jammed, she can't steady her guns. Her salvos go wide, harmlessly splashing into the waves. The British close the distance. At 9:02, a shell from Rodney crashes into Bismarck's forward superstructure, tearing through the bridge. Men are thrown against bulkheads. Glass and steel explode inward. Lindemann staggers to his feet amid the chaos. "Damage report," he shouts. "Forward fire control destroyed." Turrets Anton and Bruno out of action. The air reeks of cordite and smoke. Sparks rain down as power conduits snap free. Still, Bismarck fights. Her aft guns continue firing, even as the ship lists. Another salvo slams home, a direct hit on the conning tower. Officers are torn apart where they stand. Flames lick up the mast. Through binoculars aboard Rodney, British officers can hardly believe it. The Bismarck, the terror of the Atlantic, is being dismantled piece by piece. For 90 minutes, the Royal Navy pounds her. Hundreds of shells smash through her armor, collapsing bulkheads, igniting ammunition stores, silencing gun after gun. By 10 o'clock, Bismarck is a wreck. Superstructure flattened, decks awash with fire. Her guns fall silent, one by one. Inside, the surviving crew move in eerie calm. Some drag the wounded to the deck, Others kneel by broken hatches, murmuring prayers. The bandaged, the burned, the dazed, all gathered in the open, surrounded by smoke and ruin. Captain Lindemann, now bloodied and limping, turns to his executive officer. "It's over. We cannot fight anymore." The officer nods. "Then we must deny them the prize." Lindemann's order echoes through the corridors. "Scuttle the ship." In the engine rooms, engineers open the seacocks. Explosive charges are set in key compartments. Water pours in with a roar. On Rodney's bridge, a lookout shouts, "She's sinking." At 10:40, the guns fall silent. Bismarck lists heavily to port, smoke pouring from every hatch. Men leap into the sea, tiny black figures against the flames. The battleship rolls, her great hull rising one last time before slipping beneath the gray waves. The Atlantic swallows her whole. Silence follows, broken only by the hiss of steam and the cries of survivors clinging to debris. The Royal Navy ships slow their engines, scanning the wreckage. Sailors peer over the rails, eyes wide with awe and something close to pity. On the deck of Rodney, a young seaman whispers, "She fought to the last gun." An officer beside him nods. A worthy enemy. Beneath the waves, Bismarck descends into darkness. The laughter of her crew long gone, replaced by the steady, eternal silence of the deep. That night, as the surviving Swordfish pilots drink weak tea aboard Ark Royal, word spreads that the German battleship has been sunk. There is no cheer, only quiet relief. Lieutenant Moffat sits alone on deck, looking out over the Black Sea. The wind bites at his face. He thinks of the torpedo he dropped. A single, improbable hit that changed the course of naval history. And in the distance, somewhere beneath the waves, the mighty Bismarck rests, felled not by a fleet, but by a handful of men flying slow, fragile biplanes.